this morning comes from the book of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. I won't read it again for time, so I'll talk a little bit about building bigger barns. Before getting into the heart of the parable, it's important to be clear what this is not about. Jesus is not condemning wealth, and not even the desire for more wealth. Though some people believe there's virtue in poverty, this is not what Jesus is teaching here. The key verses which make Jesus' purpose clear are 15 and 21. He introduces the parable saying, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And Jesus finishes with these words, "This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." Jesus' warning isn't about an unbalanced or wrongly focused life. The man in the parable was consumed by his wealth and his desire for more of it, and almost nothing else mattered to him. He invested in his business and failed to invest in God. He gave his heart to money when it ought to belong to God. What leads into this parable is a dispute common today as 2,000 years ago. Then as now, families fight over money left by somebody who has died. You want to see some families get into a big old fight, let somebody leave a couple pennies in the bank, and they need to know who is going to. "Teacher," somebody in the crowd says to Jesus, "tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." The man's request does not seem unreasonable. No one who heard it would have been surprised. He has a grievance, and rabbis were considered wise people, so they were often asked to rule in family disputes. The text says, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." The law of the Torah prescribes the rules of inheritance, and rabbis were expected to interpret the application of these rules in specific instances and to arbitrate disputes. In Deuteronomy 21 and 17, the text provides a double portion of the inheritance for the firstborn. If there are two sons, the elder receives 2/3 or 67%, the second one 1/3 or 33%. And if there are three sons, the elder receives 2/4 or 50%, and the others receive 1/4 each, 25%. If there are four sons, the elder receives 2/5, which is 40%, and the others receive 1/5 each, which is 20%. The man's issue in the text is that somewhere in these rules he feels mistreated. Now, it is unlikely that he is the firstborn son, because a firstborn son would exercise control and would not require Jesus' assistance. While the man addresses Jesus as a teacher, he does not request instruction. Instead, he tells Jesus what he wants and asks or commands Jesus to do his bidding. He desires to take advantage of Jesus' moral authority. He seeks to use Jesus' authority to gain power over his brother in the dispute over their inheritance. How many times when somebody died in our families have we sought to use the church of God to beat folk over the head for us to get ahead? Now, I'm not saying anything about any one of you in particular, but I'm sure all of y'all got some stories about when folks have tried to use Jesus or the church to beat other folk over to get ahead. We live in a society where people are often judged by the quantity of material goods that they possess. We are bombarded with ads many times each day, ads that tell us that we must have this or that in order to be happy, accepted, and successful. There's always something new and improved to buy, something else to work and strive for. What all of this means is simply possessions bring happiness and security. And after a while, it gets to be like being on a treadmill. We run faster and faster, only to stay in the same place. We start feeling like if only I had that new car or that dishwasher, how different my life would be. we get these new toys for a while, the novelty then wears off. As B.B. King said, the thrill is gone. There's always something else to buy, something else to dream about. And we get to feel like if only I could take that tour of Europe, well, then I could say that I really live. How easy is it for us to be blinded and dazzled by all the material and shiny things that are going on around us? And we start saying, well, everybody else wants all these things. Why not me too? So we start wanting to build bigger barns. In the text, Jesus says to the man who made me a judge or arbiter over you. Jesus is telling the man, what has this got to do with me? And then proceeds to tell the parable of the barns. Jesus refused to become involved because this was a teaching moment. Jesus sensed a lust for wealth at the heart of this family feud. And so he gave a warning about greed and told the story of a man who was already rich and then 1 year had a bumper harvest. Now he is super rich and he has a problem. The harvest was so large that his barns couldn't contain it. He did the obvious. He called the local builder and said, I need more barns and I need them right now. Remarkably, he found a builder who would meet his deadline. Now, he knew he'd be comfortable right into the future. His barns would be full, and his new wealth would last him for years and years and years. He could sit back, sip a cold drink, and take life easy. But God called him a fool, for he would die that very night. He had lived for his wealth, dreaming of many days ahead to enjoy his fortune. But no amount of wealth could guarantee him life. And his earthly life ended without even 1 day to relax in his wealth. Now, reading this it led me to the thought of what makes for a life well lived. How do we find meaning and purpose in life? It is a question that I believe in large part brings many of us to church each Sunday. Because as important as this fundamental question is, it is rarely, if ever, addressed in other settings in which we live our lives. Our schools don't address this question with our children. And in spite of all the time they spend there, it is not a question we ask at our workplaces. If anywhere, the question may be asked at home in our families. But the truth of the matter is that the routine stuff that consumes the attention of our families keeps us so busy that even there sometimes we don't ask this question. The question of what makes for a life well lived can only be asked when our most basic physical needs are met. Those who are poor are consumed with the question of where their next meal will come from or where they can find shelter. These people are more occupied by more pressing concerns. They don't have time to worry about a bigger barn because in many cases they ain't got a barn to start with. All their attention is consumed by the question of how do I have enough to stay alive till tomorrow, not how can I build a bigger barn. But the man in the text isn't this kind of person. He's not in danger of going hungry anytime soon. His barn is full. He has more than enough. What should I do, he asked, for I have no place to store my crops. This is the point of the story when the man should have been turning his attention to the most important questions. What makes for a meaningful life? What truly matters and what doesn't? But instead, the man simply plows ahead with his plan to build a bigger barn. Now, why does he do this? Perhaps because he already assumes he knows the answer to the question. Is the answer that the world at large functions out of without even thinking about it? That they tell us the purpose of life is to build a bigger barn, to have more stuff. We send our kids to school encouraging them to work hard so they can get good grades and get into a good college and where they can work hard and do better and have good jobs and start businesses and be successful, to buy a house and a better house and steadily improve the size of their personal kingdom. And in many ways, we teach our children that it's all about building bigger barns. without concerns of those who are living around them or what is going on around them. I once read about a chaplain who encountered a middle-aged man in a hospital room who had just been given the news from his doctor that his cancer was terminal and that he only had a short time left to live. The man felt profound sadness, but it wasn't so much for the life that he wouldn't get to live as it was for the life he had never really lived in the first place. How can I die when I haven't ever lived, the man asked. He realized that in his anxiety to build a bigger barn, that he'd never really lived his life in the first place. He hadn't lived with those questions of what makes life worth living. What are the important things in life? He had simply accepted the unquestioned answer that the world handed him, that life was all about possession. Now, although Jesus doesn't exactly answer this question, there are some clues given in this parable about the qualities of a meaningful life. There are several things that seem to be missing in this man's life. The first thing missing is a significant relationship with other people. This man is all about himself. In the short monologue in the text he speaks, he uses either the word I or my multiple times. The monologue is almost funny the way Jesus tells it. The man is having a conversation with himself inside another conversation with himself. By nature, we are lonely and need other people. But the world's solution to our loneliness is to find that one perfect person. A life companion is a good thing, but if we're honest, we need more. We need a community of loving relationships, and we need a relationship with the Lord. Part of the reason we come to church every Sunday is a sense of community. In our worship service, part of the significance of sharing our joys and concerns is that it invites us to get out of ourselves and caring for others of our community. The man is also missing gratitude. This is surprising given how well things have gone for him. There's no recognition that his good fortune isn't simply a function of his own hard work. That he has been blessed and graced in a whole lot of ways that he has not acknowledged. Although, as Jesus says, it is the ground that has brought forth the great harvest, this man acts as if it was something he himself has made happen. Another thing he is missing is a sense of having a mission to serve. There's no recognition that the abundance that has been given to him comes with a calling to help those less fortunate than him. He has far more grain than he could ever use. He should recognize in this blessing an opportunity to help the many poor, hungry people in his community. But instead, he sees only the need for a bigger barn. Another thing that is more subtle is the man conjures up an ideal life of being one in which he can relax, eat, drink, and be merry. Since the man is an example of how not to be, it might sound as though relaxing, eating, and drinking and making merry were a bad thing, but it's not. He is the problem with the man. He's not talking about relaxing, eating, drinking, and being happy in the present. No, he's imagining a time somewhere in the future when he will finally be able to experience these things. When the bigger barns have been built, then he can enjoy life, but not right now. There's too much work to be done. Always something that first needs to be improved upon. If a person's whole life is devoted to nothing but relaxing, eating, and being happy, then is that a life worth living? I would say no. To have a life worth living can be summed up in one rule: balance that is derived from having God at the center of your life. Caring for yourself, but also caring about others. In simpler terms, it's all right to do what you need to do to get what you want out of life. But you can only do so much with what you got. You can't take it with you. So all you doing is building a bigger barn. Then God has something to say when people are around you starving, and you are simply hoarding more and more money and more positions. Again, there's nothing wrong with working hard to get the things that you want in life. the same as the man living under the bridge down the road. So if all we live is a life concerned about how much I can gather and stuff in the barn, then we are doing something wrong with the life that God gave us. Yeah. There's nothing, again, wrong with doing what you need to do to get ahead in life. But if your neighbor is starving to death and you're not willing to help him at all, God has something to say about that. Yeah. When you're not willing to do nothing to help nobody and you got an overabundance, God has something to say about that. Yeah. Just like in the text, he thought he was going to have forever to spend his money. But God said, you fool, tonight your soul is required. You may think you're going to have forever to spend whatever you got. But you might not know that tonight your soul may be required. Then all that's going to happen is your kids and your grandkids and everybody else is going to fight over all this stuff that you stuffed up in your bones. Again, not saying that we should not leave inheritance to our children and our grandchildren. I'm simply saying if all you care about is hoarding it up, then we have a problem. A problem that God says you need to look at what you got and what you can do for others. Because God requires us to help those we can help with whatever you can help them with. You do what you can to help those you can. Like y'all heard me say last week, if all you got is 3 pennies to give them, then give them 3 pennies. If all I got is a can of soup and a loaf of bread, I give you the can of soup and the loaf of bread. But if I got a pantry full of bread and I won't even give you a loaf of it, that says something about me and whether I truly love the God that I claim to serve. If I have no concern about those who are less fortunate than myself, it says something about me and the God that I claim to serve. All of you will bring more people to God or run them away from God with how you treat them, how you live day in and day out. Whether anybody ever says anything or not, they watch what you say and they watch what you do. So when you spend all day only focused on you and what's good for you, folks pay attention to that. So why would they want to come to your church and know anything about your God? When from that point of view, you just a greedy person that only care about you getting ahead. But folks pay attention when they see that you give up yourself to help other folks. When they see that you do what you can, even if it ain't a lie, people know. Your reputation follows you everywhere you go, whether you know it or not. Because the way the world is today, everybody somewhere knows somebody else. They can find out whatever they want to know about you probably in less than 24 hours. So them days of you being able to sneak off in this corner and do whatever you big enough and bad enough to do and nobody knowing about it, that's just about over. Especially if it ends up somewhere like the internet, because the internet is forever. So we need to think about these things and how we interact with people every day. How we treat people. We have to honestly ask ourselves, are we simply building a bigger barn? Are we doing what God would have us to do? Are we serving people the way God would have us serve? To love people the way God would have us love them? Again, we're not going to do that every day. We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes every day that we got to repent for. I make them every day, and you make them every day. Ain't ever been but one perfect person to walk across this planet. And I don't believe he's physically sitting in here. If he is, Lord, I apologize. Now, for the rest of us, we got some stuff we need to repent for every day. But the goal is to do better tomorrow than what we've done today. The goal is to ask ourselves, have I done this or have I done what God would have me do? Have I done the best to live in the ways that God would have me live? Or have I just stuffed my house full of stuff because I just want to hold on to my stuff? Because it's shiny and bright and it makes me feel good. While at the same time, my neighbors ain't got a hole. They got a hole in their roof and they ain't got no food to eat. And I see their kids with shoes on that's all tore up. But I got a closet full of shoes I could give them. My kid got on brand new shoes and got 4 or 5 in the closet I could give them with no problem. But I don't want to do it just because I don't feel like I should have to. When you see somebody suffering and you choose to look the other way, whether you admit it or not, it says something about you. And it says something about how much you actually love and want to follow God. Again, not saying we're going to do right every day, not saying we ain't going to be skeptical every day. Because I'm going to be honest, a lot of times when I pass folk on the side of the road with them signs, I'm super skeptical. Amen. I done been burned before. Amen. I'm being honest with y'all. I told you, I'm going to tell you the truth. I done been burned before. I gave somebody some money and he pulled out a stack of $100 bills like that. And I felt taken advantage of. And ever since that day, I've been skeptical. I'm like, this somebody else who's going to scam me. Amen. So I have to question myself every time I see one and say, Lord, is this the right thing to do? Yeah. Because I'm honest about why I'm skeptical. We have to be honest with ourselves about the places that we have problems in our lives. Amen. And ask why we do what we do. Why we say what we say. Because it's only when you're honest with yourself that you can get around and through those things to move to who God desires you to be. Again, don't mean you're going to be perfect or do right every day. But it helps you move ahead and do better tomorrow than what you did today. Because that's what God asks us to do. Be better tomorrow than who you are today. To do what you need to do to move ahead in your relationship with the Lord. To be a better servant. To love God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. And to love your neighbors as you love yourself. To remember that Jesus died on the cross for you. So the least you can do is give somebody a can of beans and a loaf of bread. Just to do what you can do. Whatever that is, do what you can do. Help those you can help. And know that when you've done whatever that you can do, that your living, as the song says, has not been in vain. That you've done what God would have you do to the best of your ability. So that when your journey ends, God tells you you've done well, my good and faithful servant. But that's what we all trying to get into the mansions and the streets of gold, right? Now, at least I'm talking about me. You can do what you want to do. But I'm trying to live right as best I can. Yeah. So that when I do go, God will say you did right more than you did wrong. Yeah. That you repented for the stuff that you did wrong and tried to do better the next time that stuff came up. Yeah. Now, you didn't always get it right, but I saw you and I saw the effort you made to do it. To not simply just throw everything up in a barn, but to help those you could help to the best of your ability. Yeah. So today is your day to realize you built a bigger barn. The doors of the church are not open unto you. We offer Christ to you, oh